What's up, guys? Hey, welcome to another edition of the Sherpas podcast. My name is Ryan Coral. I'm your host, and joining me today from sunny, nope, not sunny, rainy, stormy, whatever, Krista Chapman. She is a former event planner turned business and marketing strategist, kind of like somebody else I know. Well, I guess I didn't event plan. This introduction is just really solid. Back in my day when I used to do event planning for weddings, no, that's a different person. Chris and I share the same background. We worked in the event industry.
Yes.
I did tons of weddings back then. Now she helps businesses, and she's the founder of Path and Compass, and she's here today to talk to us about how, there's actually, selfishly, I'm glad that you're here because I think the stuff that we're going to talk about today is going to help me. So
really, it's just a conversation between you and I.
That's right. So Krista, thanks for taking time out. Thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Yes, it's very rainy and gloomy here in Nashville and has been as we get some hurricane remnants, but still excited to have my coffee and be chatting with you.
We're on the same time zone, yeah?
Yes.
Eastern?
Central. Oh,
Central.
you're East. I'm Central.
you're like, yes, Central. Central, Eastern, Central.
That one in between.
so tell me a little bit about your journey from, you did this business, you had this business, or you worked in the event world for like 19 years, which I'm like looking at you, I'm like, 19 years? You started
moisturizer, sunscreen, moisturizer. Yes.
I'm going to start.
No, yeah. So my background is in hospitality. I worked in hospitality and restaurants and catering and planned events and did that from high school all the way to what I call my quarter life crisis, which I was about 28 when I just sort of had that moment of like, everyone said that if you build your life this way, and if you do these things, and if you follow these rules, and if you climb this ladder of success, which I had done, and I had the corporate job and the title and the big salary and the office, and I was miserable. And I couldn't figure out kind of what had happened because being from the Midwest, which I originally am from, we're very practical and we sort of stay on task and on cue. And this was all kind of a big upheaval. And I sat back and was like, there's got to be a better way to do life. And there's got to be a better way to build a life and build a career. And ultimately for me, a business that would serve me, but also would sort of serve people, my industry I work with. And so I think that it was one of those things where I just had to step back from my life and start over. So I scrapped everything. And because I had gone in this like kind of hyper successful space, I went to the other side of like, I'm going to go like live at an ashram and get into yoga and like meditate all the time and read all these books on Buddhism. And then I'm going to be happy. Of course, that's not how it works because there's no sort of external path to that. And that's what I realized through this. And what I realized working with business owners, or what I realized through the fact is that I wanted to be able to work with business owners and help them sort of see that there's a better way, a different way that we can approach how we create and build businesses so that we're not creating or putting people on these same tracks that I got stuck on and that I got really lost on. And I really think too, when you back up and think big picture, it's like capitalism is the culture of America and America, right? And so it's important that if we're going to change the culture or approach, evolving the culture, perhaps business is kind of a space to do that in. And so that was my sort of like pipe dream. And that's really what I continue to do today. So yeah, I work with business owners now, but I stayed in my industry because it's what I knew. And because I do really find events exciting. I find the work that we do interesting and impactful in a way that I had kind of come around to, because there was a time where I felt very much like the work we did was very frivolous and, it's weddings and parties and like, we're not saving the world. We're not solving cancer, but and so that took me some time to come around to, but I did eventually realize, I think it's important to realize this as creatives and as artists, that we play a very important role sort of above the layer of survival. And we play a role in that layer of thriving, which is so much more important and so much more meaningful in creating a life that has purpose and beauty and all of those things. And that's why our work is necessary. And that's why what we do is important, because ultimately we don't want to just like make it to the day. We want to celebrate our lives, and parties and events do that. So that was how that kind of all came full circle and why I decided to stay in the industry. And yeah, now I work with businesses and I help them to reach their audience, to think more critically about their audience and what they're trying to create, and just really build a more meaningful business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I was actually talking to my mom yesterday about this idea. She's at a new job, and we're just talking about, we brought in a lady to talk to us about culture the last couple of weeks, and so she's just kind of consulting with us. And it's hilarious because I don't care what industry, if you're doing wedding, you're in the industry, pizza delivery person. Business has there are the same struggles, if you're a freelancer, if you're a business owner, the same struggles. So like somebody like Jackie, who's doing this consulting work for us, she's coming into our business. She hasn't worked with another video business, but it's amazing because she knows all the struggles of a business owner. She knows all the struggles of employees. There is, so, I want to think like, well, no, this is my business and we're different. We're really creative and we're doing, stuff that's really different. But at the heart and at the core, we want to do meaningful work, and we have the same conflicts. It's like, take work out and we still have the same conflicts. It's just not work related, right? It's just personal related. So I love what you're saying, that even though you decided to stay in the event world, so much of what you are leading people through and teaching is very applicable to filmmakers, to pizza delivery. I don't know, freelance pizza deliverers. I don't know if that exists, but so which is why you're here hanging out today to kind of talk about some of these struggles that most business owners go through, no matter what business they own. So I'm curious to know what is like the number one struggle when you're sitting down with somebody. What is the one big frustration that you're hearing over and over that a business owner is experiencing?
So it's so interesting. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because more often than not, people will reach out to me because they're asking about a specific platform. They want to get better SEO. They've heard about this like email marketing thing and like, how does that work? And like, man, I really need help with my Instagram. And so we'll start to kind of dialogue and chat there. The bigger question is that they want to reach more people. They want to grow their business. They're just asking through the lens of a platform because that's how they know to ask.
Right.
Here's the thing though, I can't tell you how many business owners eventually that I sit down with, and as we start to peel back and peel back and peel back, and they're like, well, I need to increase my sales, I need to increase my sales. But when we get to the bottom of it, their self-worth is such an area of struggle for them, often because they're creative and they've been pushed against by our traditional systems in so many different ways, trying to cram them into a box that was never going to fit them anyway. But they question themselves all the time. And so as a result, their self-worth, their value system isn't as solid as it needs to be able to go out there and confidently say to a prospect, to a potential client, that this is what you should pay me, this is what I'm worth, and this is how I can confidently promote myself and get people to understand why I'm going to help solve your problems and make your life better, and all the things we do as business owners. It comes down to ground level. I am not enough, which goes, I think for business owners, it goes to like every person in the world. That's what we're struggling with. But for business owners, it becomes their hurdle to more sales. And it becomes a space where I more often than not have to work there first before we can actually get into a space of growing their business. Because if you don't believe that you can have more, or believe that you can take up more space, or that you're allowed to have more than you quote unquote need, we can't get any further. And so that's the number one thing that I think I hear people, and it's sad because it's like, gosh, you just, but it is what it is.
Yeah. That was my question, is like, what is the lie that we're all believing? Because at some point, we do all. I remember like when we chatted the other day and we were talking about this, I'm like, man, there was a long season. It lasted years where I just felt like, I'm like, well, I can't charge like that much for it because, because I don't know, it's not worth that much. And really what I was saying is like, I'm not worth that much because somebody else is paying a lot more for that same thing. and coming to that place of like, identity and confidence and whatever. How do creatives get over that hurdle of stopping believing that lie that yeah, you're not worth that much. You shouldn't charge that much.
Yeah. I wish there was a magic pill, but therapy, I guess, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that I think is the work of our life. And I think that that's the other thing too, I try to always take, and this kind of brings up another thing too, that as entrepreneurs and really in this sort of world of like YOLO and FOMO and whatever else I'm entirely too old for, you have more time. You're not meant to sprint through this space of entrepreneurship. And so when you think I have to figure all this out, I have to get all these sales, if I don't, I'm going to miss this opportunity and my life's going to fall apart, my business is going to fall apart. None of that's true. I think we need to sort of own the discomfort and recognize that these things are going to be there, and then we don't necessarily have to fix them. Yep. We just have to learn to live with them and learn to find ways to manage them or to, overcome them. I have a really good friend of mine, a photographer here in Nashville, and he talks about, that as entrepreneurs and as creatives, we kind of are followed by this sort of like incessant chorus in our head of people telling us things, of our mother's voice, of our teachers' voices, of our own voices of insecurity and things like that. And he's like, you just have to sort of take it and let it sit outside of you. And I totally do that all the time. It's sort of this idea of like, thank you for your input, crazy person in my head. I just need you to go sit over here right now because I got this. So I think it's just kind of getting into these routines and practices of creating buffers that allows you to live with something, but not let it control you.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really good. My wife and I are currently in therapy. She loves me a ton. I love her a ton, but we want a better marriage. And I told this to the gal that was cutting my hair yesterday. She's like, you're in therapy? I'm like, it's fine.
What's wrong?
It's all, it's all good. But one of the things, and the problem is like my wife, she's like, hey, we should see somebody. And so we're seeing some friends, somebody that a friend had seen. And so this woman is great. But, I'm thinking like we're going and this is going to be really good for my wife. And I'm the one in the meeting. I'm like crying. I'm like, oh my gosh. She's like, so tell me about your dad. And I'm like, oh.
We're like, no, not that.
No, but yesterday we went yesterday, and there is a certain lie that I have believed since I was little, and she said, when Andrea says this thing to you, you subconsciously this lie comes up into your mind, and you're telling yourself like, I'm not going to be able to do that well, and so you don't do it well. And she's like, does that sound? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I haven't really thought of it like that. But yeah, like that's probably not every single time that, she needs me to do this thing that's happening. But she's like, so what you need to do is you need to like kind of train yourself to be able to catch yourself hearing yourself tell you that and change that to, no, I got this. I can do that. I can do this thing through to completion, and it's going to be great. Like, you got this. And I'm like, oh yeah, like super motivational, like you got this. But I was like, no, that's like the opposite of the lie that I've kind of subconsciously carried with me all my life. And it only comes up in this close relationship with Andrea. And so yeah, to your point, sorry, I'm having my own therapy session currently.
No, it's good. That's what happens. People talk to me, so it's okay.
Yeah. So my point being, yes, like the internal dialogue, the lie that we believe, like you're not worth it. You this is like, maybe in 10 years, like after you've got tons of experience under your belt, then maybe, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Cause like right now, today, like you're just not there. So don't even consider charging more or making a profit or adding to, having a savings account, or saving for retirement or anything like that. Like that's not, you just need to get through today and maybe through this week.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it's, as a business owner, the best thing that you can do, and maybe let's just say a person in general, because this stuff overlaps entirely. You really need to take the time to get to know yourself. You really need to know who you are, what your core values are, what your anti-values are, what kind of path you want to blaze in the world, the types of people that you want to surround yourself with. And then you need to recognize that when that, like how you perceive yourself, who that person is, when you realize that person is going to go against a lot of things, that you're going to end up on that, path less traveled, that's okay.
Yep.
And that I think is a really hard thing to do, is go against the grain of everything that our society is trying to push us towards and everything that we're being told. And this is, a trap that we get into as we just kind of end up being consumers. And as consumers, then we end up kind of being cattle, and then we just, sort of lose ourselves, versus being creators and people that really are working to say, no, this is who I am, and this is the kind of space that I want to create in the world. I think that it's much more about, when it comes to being successful, it's, in my experience and in my, the work that I've done and digging into things, it's not about how passionate you are. It's not about how skilled you are. It's about how well you know yourself and how resilient and adaptable you are.
Adaptable, that's good.
Because everything's going to change. And so you have to be willing to recognize that things are going to come at you and push you back on your heels. And there has to be an element of passion, and there has to be an element of skill. But those aren't going to be the things that get you through the hurdles and the challenges. It's going to be whether or not you are able to get back up and say, no, I'm committed to this. This is what I believe to my core. And then you can adapt and adjust to it. Because that's where I see things start to fall apart for people. And nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to go into the muck. Nobody wants to go into the shit. And I tell people this all the time. I'm like, it's going to get gross and awful and scary. And you're going to bring up all the parent stuff. And then you're going to be like, oh my God, but I love my parents. But they ruined my life, So it's okay though, because that's the point, is that we're supposed to swing from both the worst to the best and have that full human experience to be better at it.
As you're saying that, I'm thinking about like when I started my business, and when the majority of you, the listener, when you started your business, you start doing this thing, and you're like, I'm pretty good at this video thing, and people are loving it. And then you're like, you know what, I can charge for it. People are going to pay me for this. And you're doing it, and you're kind of like, if you're like most, like you're charging way less than you should. So like lots of people want to hire you because you're a good deal and you're doing a good job. And in my life, I never like created core values, for my business.
Right.
Really, core values are an extension of who you are, right? That's your core values for your business really are like, this is the culture that you're creating. This is who you are. This is what you believe at home or at work. Like, this is just who you are. And without taking that time, you could be in your business for 2, 3, 5, 10 years and not happy and not fulfilled.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure.
Because you didn't create that baseline. You didn't define that baseline, even though you kind of know, like, what makes you happy. You know what makes you fulfilled. You know what kind of work gets you excited. You know what kind of work doesn't. But actually creating this baseline to say, like, I'm going to try to say no to that kind of work. And I'm going to try to say yes to these kind of employees. And I'm going to say no to, I don't know, jobs that are less than, this much money. Right. In the course that we offer, one of the very first lessons is it's all about exactly what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Because most people, they're frustrated in their business. I love that you brought that up. Like, yeah, this is like the most popular thing. We address this. The first thing that we have people walk through is like, hey, let's talk about your core values. Like, what kind of clients get you excited? What kind of jobs get you excited? Yeah. What things, don't resonate with you? And like, write that out and like have some kind of a roadmap for you to know what do you actually want to do, right? After doing this work for so long, you're saying yes to lots of different things and you're experiencing tons of different frustration. So it is so important to stop, take a step back. And you don't just do it once in your business. I'm sure you've done this multiple times in your business. We've done the same thing when we've gone through a rebrand. It's like, hey, let's ask ourselves a question again. Like, what is getting us excited? What do we believe as a culture, and what are we going to live and die for?
Right. No, and that goes back to the idea of adaptability, and just that as a human, you're going to evolve. You're going to go from potentially being a single, brash 20-something that thinks you can take on the world to now I'm married and now I have children, or now I've traveled more, or now I own more things in the world. And so I have to be mindful of that. And I just put it in perspective because I've had more experiences. And so you as a human evolve, and your business should as well. I think that's the death of businesses, is when they just become, this is who we are forever.
Forever.
And,
yeah.
and that doesn't, that I think is something that is missed in a lot of coaching and a lot of just, talks about business. It's like, once you like stamp out the business plan, okay, that can go in a drawer and be done. And we forget this really, really important part of business. And it's that you have what you want and, the problems that you solve and who you serve, but you also have this thing called the market that you have to move with.
Yeah.
And if we're not being mindful of how, the work that we're putting out there or how things are changing in the market, that's when things can fall apart without you even realizing it. And I think that happened to a lot of businesses, in the 2009, 10 space when social media suddenly came out as like the area. And now you have all these businesses that were like powerhouses that are gone.
Yep.
It's going to happen again. And so you really have to be watching and be aware that this market, we can't live in this bubble and just say, oh, this is what I believe and the world should adapt to me. And yes, you should know what you stand for, but then you should also recognize that you have to evolve and change that and revisit it. And not only for your own evolution, but for the evolution of just the market and humanity. We're getting big here today.
Yeah, this is when I, today, like we service our production company, Tell Studios, we service businesses, right? That's our focus. We help them grow. 14 years ago when I started this, we were doing mostly wedding films, right? 90% of what we were doing was, shooting, editing, delivering weddings. And we became quickly, like in the first 3 or 4 years, we became one of the most sought after wedding film companies in the Metro Detroit area, if not the most. Purely out of, you've got this young guy who's excited about this business, and I'm just like, what can I do to like grow this thing? I'm so excited. So it grew. Well, after years, we're doing destination stuff. We're doing like, we shoot for celebrities and like just it's like whoa, this is crazy, this is amazing. I'm hiring employees, we're getting studio space, and then 4 years ago the mirrorless cameras come out, and DSLR came out 2008 2009, and that served us well because we bought and we started shooting on these lenses, and people were like, whoa, this is amazing. And we had a glide cam, so our stuff our stuff looked different, and that like got us through the first few years. But then as our prices increase, and then 4 years ago, people that are out of college, excited to do something on their own, are like, hey, I can shoot your wedding, and I've got this $700 mirrorless camera, and they start shooting these weddings. And then we're competing, we charge $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 for a wedding film, and then we've got guys down the street that are doing stuff for $2,000, and they're giving them twice the amount of coverage and all this stuff. Well, for us, it really became evident that we were having to work so hard to we had to start convincing people that it was worth spending money, and we didn't have to do that for a long time. And had we not launched this other branch or brand to start appealing to businesses and start working with businesses, we would be closed. We could not maintain trying to fight for $7,000 wedding films when the market changed and the technology changed, and then a bunch of people and God bless them, like I'm glad that these people are doing work, and I'll be surprised if they can sustain charging $2,500 for a wedding film for a bunch of years. Try doing that for 14 years and having employees, like you just can't do it. There probably is a way to do it if you're one person shop or whatever. But to your point, being cognizant of the market and being adaptable and ready to change and not stuck in your ways and just saying like, this is how it's always going to be, is so important, especially because so much of what we do is tied to technology, that if you're not staying up on trends, 360 video, drones, VR, 4K, 8K, all that stuff, at some point you become irrelevant. But then also knowing like, well, who's your competition and what are they doing? And then what are you doing as a team, as a culture? How are you guys growing? How are you adding more value to your clients? There's just so many different layers to be able to pay attention to.
Yeah, no, and I think in that wedding space particularly, everybody thinks weddings are so easy to get into, and they really are. There is not a barrier barrier of entry in the space, which I think is to the chagrin of a lot of us who've been in there a lot longer. Because you're talking to a 20-something, and they don't know, they don't have the experience and reference points of like, this is why this costs this much, and this is why people charge this much. And they're also now too, with these, younger and younger generations, the tech savviness, it makes a lot of these things a lot easier for them just to sort of outsource in their own friend group versus having to go to a professional, so to speak. So I think that is a space that does make it very challenging for more experienced people to stay in that wedding space. And that's why really, and this is sort of, again, thinking of how your business over time is going to evolve, because I've now been working for myself for 8 years. And where I started and where I'm at now are very different, and where I'm and kind of how I'm thinking about things and how I'm thinking about a business. In the beginning, it's just kind of getting out there. You'll do anything. You'll try it.
Right.
You're in this trial and error space. But as you evolve, you get more strategic. You want to work smarter, not harder.
Yep.
And you start to diversify. And I think that's a space that, if you really are going to be a true business owner, which is really interesting that you had mentioned this when we had talked earlier, the idea of at some point you have to make a choice is that, do I want to be an exceptional business owner or an exceptional artisan?
Mm-hmm.
And that's so, so true, because business owners, you can go into any field, any industry, and just replicate this business that you created. And I think you'll start to recognize that, okay, this opportunity in this market is evolving and changing, but there's new opportunity over here, or there's new interests and passions I have. It's like building a stock portfolio. You're not buying all tech stocks.
Right. So
I think that, as you're thinking more long-term in your businesses, it is smart to be thinking about like, yes, I'm going to have a space for weddings, but I'm also going to be thinking about corporate events, or I'm going to be thinking about how I can diversify into, nonprofits and other spaces that there's a lot, we just kind of stay in what we know and then get really frustrated when it doesn't work for us versus continuing to grow and push. And I think that, that's what you need to do it's about putting your head down and doing the work and not going out there and bitching about all these other people coming on the market that are so much cheaper and they just don't know, and you're taking all my business. And I'm like, pull it together and move on, because that's what successful business owners do.
Yeah, and I would say the majority of those people are people that are working in their business and not on their business, right? They're the ones that they're just doing the job. They know how to show up, they know how to do the thing, they come back home, then they're done. Working on your business is saying like, oh geez, wait, hang on a second. The market's changed. Okay, so what do we do? I've always looked at that like, I love that. I mean, it's like, oh, it breaks my heart that we don't really, we still do wedding films, but like hardly any at all. And it breaks my heart because 15 years ago, I was like, I'm going to change the world. We're going to create these films that are going to inspire couples to stay married and to remember the promises that they made. And like today, I'm like, well, we're not really doing that anymore because it's like the market can't bear it anymore for us. But, I've always been up for that challenge of like, okay, so like what's next? Because I'm so passionate about telling stories. I'm so passionate about working with people and trying to figure out still, like, I still want to change the world, right? So it might not be through wedding films, but how can I do that, right? That's like core to who I am. I'm like, I want to do something. I want to work with people, and I want to feel at the end of the day like we've created, whether it's a piece for their business, it's a piece for their family, whatever. I want to feel like they're like, man, that experience was great, and or this film is going to live on, and generations are going to be pumped and so grateful to have this thing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think that I love talking to you. But no, I think that there's two things I pulled away from that is that, first of all, I think we should point out there's nothing wrong with working in your business.
No, oh my gosh, you have to.
You do, but I think that where people go wrong is that they don't. If you want to be the person that's going to work in your business and is going to be the artist and is going to be making the cakes and doing the flowers and getting the footage, then you need to find yourself a partner who can cover the business side of stuff.
Yes.
And recognize that if the best thing you can do in business is to find the gap and fill it with another person that that meets you halfway. And so that, I think, is if you want to live in your business and live and breathe that, then go find yourself a stellar business partner that can do all of the grimy, gritty stuff that you're like, I don't want to core values and mission statements and like accounting. Find the person that does.
I don't think anybody in the world wants to do accounting, but carry on.
I still do my taxes by hand, like a crazy.
Gross.
I know. It's like a soothing 3-day like retreat for me. I know. I don't know.
You're an alien.
It is. I don't know where I have it, but
it's weird.
I tell people that, they're like, "You're crazy." I'm like,
you're on this show right now. This is.
I know. Cut it. It's done.
But I agree, 1,000,000% to find, there's one of my favorite books is Rocket Fuel, and it talks about the visionary in the business and the integrator. And if you don't have that, you need that, especially like you're saying, if you want to be the tactical person that's doing always the one that's filming or always the one editing, you need to close the gap by getting somebody that's going to do all that other stuff. I think that's really, really good advice. Yeah,
absolutely. The other thing I think to recognize, because you had mentioned this about telling stories is essentially your super skill. We all have a super skill. Mine is clarity. I'm really, really good at being given kind of a garbage bag of randomness and thoughts and visions and ideas and just being like, here it is. This is what you're after. That super skill is transferable to any industry.
Yeah. Right.
Any vehicle. So the work I do now, helping businesses see their path forward and their growth more clearly. I did the same thing with couples and clients when I was planning their events.
Yeah.
Because they would come to me and just like dump all this stuff on me and be like, I don't know, like purple and glitter. And then I'd be like, well, this is how it looks beautiful for your wedding. And that clarity skill is that, I think, goes back to really getting to know yourself and figuring out what that is, because it gives you the confidence to be able to shift into different vehicles or to adapt with the industry, because you recognize that I'm not selling videography.
Right.
I'm selling storytelling. I'm not selling, marketing. I'm selling clarity and confidence in your business. And so that kind of takes you to that emotional space where people actually make buying decisions versus in the more kind of utilitarian space. Because the last thing you want to do in any service business is turn yourself into a commodity, because then you have no worth.
Yeah.
And you create the worth by defining, this special thing.
It's so perpetuated. Like the early years, I remember toiling over, okay, we've got the bronze package we can offer couples, the silver package, and the gold package. What are we going to include? And, looking at everybody, our competition, what are they including? Okay, well, we can make this. And then all of your clients, guess what they do? They're like, well, so-and-so, they include blah, blah, blah in their package. And that's not what it's like, oh my gosh, if that's what you want to be known by, if that's your difference maker is like what you're including in the packages that you're offering, that's like, not what I want to do. Right. And when we learn that finally, like, hey, what is our super skill, and talk about that instead of like what kind of cameras we're shooting on or how many, DVDs.
People don't care.
People don't care, right? No. They care about your story, and they care about, feeling like you're gonna bring value, and that you're gonna care about their day or their business or whatever. And when they start believing that, then at some point, well, tell me again, how many hours do we get, or how many DVDs do we get? Like that's like the afterthought, but like we want you. We know we want you. We're convinced of that. Yeah. That was a big epiphany moment for me. Not as early on as I would have hoped, but early on enough to where, I'm doing this 14 years later. So yeah, I'm really glad that you said that.
Well, and keep in mind, again, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So we don't have to figure it all out in the first even 10 or 20 years.
I feel good about
that. So we're good about that. But no, I think that's we sell trust.
Yeah.
More than anything else, we are selling people because we're not giving them anything tangible.
Right.
Oftentimes for many, 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 many months. So we're selling them that they can trust us, that we're going to do what we say. And in the end, it's going to be what they want. And it's almost better that they don't have details. Packages are great for gimmicks. And I think that marketers and like kind of, will say you need all these things because they want stuff to be able to put out into the world. And I get this. I create this all the time for my clients. We do all kinds of promotions and things. but we're doing it really to raise brand awareness. I know I've got a promotion I'm working on right now with some clients that's as we're going into a busy booking season. And I've said to them, like, look, guys, I'm like, I don't care if a single person books this package.
Yeah.
This is a reason for your sales team to follow up and call people. This gives, you a reason to be top of mind, to send people information.
Yeah.
So it's more about that. It just keeps you in front of people and keeps you relevant and shows that you're creating and gets you on the phone with somebody.
Right.
Because then that's where then you actually then sell them the trust and create the thing that they want.
Yep.
And they're like, yeah, great. I don't care how you get there.
Yeah.
So I think that sometimes we get too caught up in like, well, and again, that goes back to like the value piece, that if you're having to kind of buffer yourself in all of these packages and like create these, look at all these things I'm giving you, it's because you don't believe that you alone are enough.
Yes. It goes back to that.
Clarity, man. Super skill.
Yeah, but that's really good though, to think that I was relying on, it was like, well, they're not booking us. Okay, well, let's add more stuff, and let's convince them with more things that they can take away. And really, most of the people that were hiring us when we were doing weddings, like they had never been married before, so they didn't know, but for them, if they walked away from meeting me, if they felt confident that we could do the job, that we're gonna kind of hold their hand through this, and like we really care about them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's intangible. That's worth way more than 2 extra DVDs.
Right,
whatever like add-on that we would come up with. Do you remember DVDs? Do you remember those things?
I do. I actually remember floppy disks.
Oh man.
I wrote my college thesis on a floppy disk.
You're as old as me, man.
And I can't.
Was it
even,
5 1/4 or was it a 3.5 inch?
I had the big ones in elementary school, and then I had the little ones.
Okay.
I had the hard disk, the hard floppy disk.
Yes,
You had to
those are
stack
3.5 inch discs.
And you used to buy like the big stack of DVDs because you'd burn all the music back in the day.
Yeah. Well, just legally, like stuff you own.
Of course, yeah, right.
Napster.
Oh gosh, those were the days.
So to divert here a little bit, FOMO. What is? I guess I could have Googled that, but what is that? What's FOMO? You said YOLO earlier. I'm like, I know YOLO, but FOMO.
FOMO is fear of missing out.
Oh yeah. Okay. I used to.
Oh Ryan, you're old. Come on now.
Yeah, I know. I have heard.
All the kids are saying it.
Fear of missing out. There's another one that it's like, like for like or something like that.
Oh yeah, I don't see. As a marketer, we make up words all the time, and that's where like I have a sort of a grammar nerd on my team, and she's always just like, no, it's a dash, not a hyphen. Yeah. And I was like, who cares? It's like we're just writing. Like it's all like grammar is all relative. And she's like, no, it's not. I'm like, yes, it is, because it wasn't this way years ago when we used to use like ye of old time.
Right.
So words totally different. So yeah. So I think we tend to come up with all kinds of crazy things, and so that's why I keep up with it, because then I can use it. And you
sound cool when using it.
I'm all like, I'm not.
So tell me, if there's one piece of advice, for the filmmaker that is like, oh man, how do I get some clarity? How do I kind of, the market has changed. Maybe I'm struggling with this in my business. Like what is your best piece of advice, do you think, for a filmmaker or for a small production studio that is trying to grow their business?
Best piece, that's such a massive question. I'm like, it depends.
So like you're about to die and you can only it's like Yoda. He's like, you last Skywalker. So like, this is your moment to help somebody's business go from. So
I think the things that I always lean back on are a couple of things. You know the answer. I promise you know the answer. There's just too much noise, be it in your own head and from outside sources, and you need to get quiet and you need to just feel it more than try to figure it out. So, because our bodies are very intuitive and our souls know the way. So you know the answer. You may not like the answer, but you know it. I think the other thing too is just to really have faith that if you are meant to be here, you will be here. And if you're not, let yourself flow a different direction. So I think so often we kind of fight and don't just let ourselves kind of organically go where we're meant to go. And if you're in a space where your business is struggling and things are just not working out for you, do you need to be in business? Do you need to do a different kind of business? Do you need to step away from things right now?
Yeah.
Do you need to spend that money to make it happen? I think, these are all things that they're such difficult responses and scary responses and risky responses that push against all of our comfort zones and boundaries. So it becomes a very emotional, like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
It brings up all the triggers. And that's where I think if you have taken the time to really recognize that there's a small, steady voice inside of you that knows where you're meant to go in all parts of your life, it just kind of reveals itself. But we want it now. We have to have the answer now. We have to figure it out now. We stress about it. We overthink it. We overanalyze it versus just kind of let it come. So that would be my space and that's what has really always helped me. When I left my corporate job, I had no plan. I was just like, I can't do that anymore, but I have no idea where I want to go. I thought I would try writing. I ended up freelancing and doing a lot of gigging, but I really let things kind of organically happen. And then as a result, and taking that time to figure out where I wanted to go, I think it made it a more correct path for me at that point in my life. But yeah, we don't know things unless we kind of scoot ourselves along, look around, reevaluate, knowing that we can always backtrack, we can always detour. But the work is to know you are enough. Yeah. And then it all just kind of comes together.
Yeah, that's good. I would add to that. I feel like there have been plenty of times in my life where I have been quiet and I've been like, what's the right answer?
Yeah.
And for me, what's been so helpful is I've surrounded myself with people that are older, wiser, smarter.
Yeah.
That have blazed the trail, that have made mistakes. And that's what I love about the Studio Sherpas community is that you have so many people that are in such different places in their business. To have other people, even if it's just a perspective, to say like, oh, that's possible. Okay, I never thought about that. And then to go and to be quiet and to say like, okay, so I've heard different perspectives now that I know like what's achievable, that kind of opens up a space that I never was able to consider before because I didn't think I was enough. So to actually see somebody else who isn't like super different from me, has achieved this thing, like, maybe I can do that. And do I want to, right?
And taking the time
that's really good.
Yeah, taking the time to figure out once you've kind of gotten all this information. I do agree with that the whole community thing, that would probably be my second piece of advice. Because you only let me have one.
I knew you were about to say it, so.
Yeah, I mean, because I've created that in my own space here. I really think that as business owners, you are on your own island. You are the only person in your organization that is the owner. Oftentimes, you may have a partner, but sometimes that can get muddied by marriage and things like that, especially in this space. So having other peers to talk to, connect with, to share strategies with, this is something that I'm kind of building out more in my own business as, creating a space, not for the industry, business owners. Yeah. Because we have different challenges, we have different insecurities, we have employee issues and all of those things that you want to be able to talk frankly about, and having a person that can even just acknowledge that what you're going through is normal and this is how they dealt with it and here's how some of their strategies, and then going back into yourself and saying what's right for me based on where I want to go, based on what I believe, what I'm trying to create, the life that I want to create, which I think we forget a lot. Yeah. Because so often we're creating the life that we think we should create, the life we think people want us to create, and not creating the actual life that like serves us. So that's where I think it's important to have the peers and then your own self, kind of point of reflection.
I agree 1,000,000%. That's a lot of percentage. So how can people connect with you? I know you have some tool that people can.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the best way to connect with me, you can head over to my website, which is pathandcompass.com, all spelled out. I've got a couple things there. I do have my own podcast, which is where I sit with bosses and we have bourbon and chat just like this.
Yes.
So I have a podcast. I also have an email list. For those of you that are interested in signing up for that, the giveaway for the takeaway from our email list is my copy and paste email scripts for saying no. I think boundaries are really important in this space, and so often we're asked to do things as creatives, especially for free, that you need to be able to gracefully say thank you, no thank you,
especially from family and friends.
Yeah, so that's my kind of giveaway script. So I would love for people to grab that, and you can get that through signing up for my email list on my website. I'm also on Instagram at Path and Compass. So yeah, that's how you can get in touch with me.
Awesome. Well, this was super fun. I really appreciate you taking the time and dropping all those knowledge bombs.
Thank you. No, it was exciting. I so enjoyed talking to you. It's like it was over in a blink.
Next time we'll have bourbon to.
Yes. Yeah. I know it was a little early this morning, but sometimes it's
it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
That's true. Awesome. That's true.
Krista Chapman, Path and Compass. Thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you.